Hey guys, I'm Amelia and I'm hosting the PianoTales Podcast. I am particularly excited for my guest today. His name's James Atin-Godden. He created the AG Piano Book series, in which he wrote beginner piano book songs, but made them really engaging, had lots of fun stories, and overall they just sound really, really cool. A little different than the standard traditional method book. Yet they still cover very important pedagogical topics. And I'm just super excited to hear what he has to say about storytelling and how it's important for beginner piano students and just overall his storytelling process, how he comes up with these ideas. So I'm excited to be learning from him today and share it with you guys.
I am a composer and producer and musician, and I started playing piano when I was about 6. But not very seriously. I was definitely one of those kids that didn't practice very much, and I quit for a while and came back when I was 13 when music was cool again. I was one of those kids who wasn't good at practicing, didn't have the patience or the attention span to practice really. So I really liked being creative and just making stuff up. And one of the story I was telling was that I had a really old version of Finale on my computer, and I used to love to do weird experiments, just have masses of 128 notes. But when I was 13, I went to summer camp, and kids had guitars and could play cool things on the guitar. And I was I want to be cool like those kids. So I picked up the guitar, and to this day I still play guitar and love playing guitar. But I realized that guitar's hard, so I realized, oh wait, I already know how to play piano. I should just use that. So I went back to the piano, and what I remembered the most from taking lessons when I was a kid was triads. That was the most important thing I learned when I was a kid, because it was note, skip, and that's a chord. That's how easy a chord is to play on the piano. That's awesome. On the guitar it's so hard, but here it's just blah. So that was really important for me to as a gateway to starting to play music, that it could be that simple, that it could just be one shape that moves around. So I would just start writing songs and jamming and stuff, and then I started taking piano lessons and taking it more seriously, and went to university for it and stuff. But after that, yeah, there was this interesting transition phase there at 13.
Yeah, that's really awesome to hear that that whole transition. And I love that your coming back to piano was you knew that music was meant to be this cool thing. It's so cool, and you could do so much and craft things. And I love the note finale, the 128th notes thing. That's so funny. And I think it's really interesting that you mentioned triads specifically, rather than remembering songs or whatever, you remember the triads, because that, I guess, as we know as musicians, unlocks different chords and moods and emotions when you piece them together. So it's really cool that you brought that up. So going back, so you wrote your whole book. I know you did your for kids piano book, and then you made the stories with them. Could you give a little background as to what inspired you to write it, and your whole story, how did you start it essentially?
Right. So around 2016, I was teaching a lot of piano lessons, super heavy teaching piano lessons. And I was using all the standard method books, and I just didn't feel that music was particularly engaging or exciting. I didn't like the art. I didn't like the vibe. I just wasn't working. So I was wouldn't it be fun if I just made up some pieces that I know would work and I know would jive with my kids? And so I just made this little book of 20, 30 songs or something. That was the original one. And I just printed 50 of them. And it just was a fun little venture, not a big deal. And, I gave it to my students, whatever. And then around 2021, I guess 2020, it was COVID, and I was kind of I'm going to try a new thing. I'm going to try TikTok. And I tried TikTok, and then I'm oh, this would be kind of a cute story. Right, I made this book. Why don't I talk about that? And then that blew up. And then all of a sudden there was 1,000 teachers who were please, can I get a copy? And I was oh my God, I have no vehicle to get this to people. What am I doing? So I quickly threw it online, and I had an ebook, and then I sold some, and I realized wait, this is a tiny book. What if I actually made a book series? What if I actually made my own thing? And so I just, with my own belief in myself, I just kind of went for it, and it took 500 hours. It took so long. I had to write 150 pieces of music, and I hired a brilliant artist who was really stoked on it, and that's it. We just made it happen, and I put it out in the world, and now here I am.
Wow, that's very impressive, and just amazing on your part for doing this, not just for your students, but for other piano teachers who so desperately want quote unquote like cool music for their students, other than just like a piano of interest is great, but I really love that you expanded upon it and you approached it in such a unique way. So like if you came up with all these different pieces, like how do you develop the stories or like the ideas that go with it, but try to stay fresh? Like how do you come up with so many ideas?
Well, I just think about what I would have liked when I was like 10. 10 is like a good average age, right? And so I'm just thinking like, whoa, okay, well, what is cool? What is cool when you're a kid? Okay, I like sword fights and like battles and stuff. I like food. Food's great. Animals are great. Jokes are great. Those are things I like. Okay, so from within the realm of like generally those, or like fantasy or like science fiction or like, like what are cool concepts? And then so usually I would start with that. Like, okay, I know I want a song about pirates. Okay, cool, pirate song. Okay, and then I just try to come up with a little melody or like a few words about pirates. Sometimes sometimes it's hard to come up with the ideas. Sometimes I just have to go sit in the park and just like, okay, funny concepts. But like, I'm a pretty good, like my specialty is sort of as an improviser and composer. So once I have the funny idea, I'm pretty good at just spitting out a melody that that'll go with that concept.
That makes sense.
And then I allowed myself a little more freedom and then the other hard thing was writing stuff that is easy. That was the hardest thing by far. Like the stuff for like the advanced books is like no problem because it can be a cool piano piece, albeit with like relatively easy and playable. But like for the stuff for like the beginning, that was hard to write. The stuff where it's like, okay, I have to there can't be anything other than skips and steps, right? Or like I can't have any sharps or flats here, or like how can I make this fun? And there I had to rely more on my humor. There I had to rely more on the words because you kind of have to just stick to 5 notes in the beginning.
I think I saw one of your recent videos, you talked about that and you made like a backtrack for one of the beginner pieces. So that's so cool. So like, have you found a lot of success? Like, do your students enjoy playing with the backtrack or like knowing that they could have a backtrack when they're like just starting out?
Yeah, for sure. It's relatively new. It's like, pretty like, I haven't spread it around that much. So I've heard good things. And I think that it definitely helps to like have something to play with, especially those like, easier, simpler pieces where it doesn't quite, that's kind of the problem, right? Is it doesn't quite sound like music yet when you're playing easy stuff. Like when it's just like, do, 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 it's like, it's not music yet, right? Where like the cool thing is like, not too far into piano, you can add the left hand and then it starts to sound like music, you can add harmony and like rhythm.
Yeah, I think that's a good point you brought up though, because like when you're a beginner, it feels so mechanical. You're just like, I want to play the notes, stepping, like there's nothing really to it. But then it's so cool that you're doing these books in a way to like engage them. Like outside of this, it's like music is fun. Like it tells a story. It can be humorous in all these different ways. So like what kind of impact does storytelling have, like especially for young beginner students?
The cool thing about learning piano is that when you play, like with other instruments, it's like monophonic because it's one voice. But piano has the thing where it's multiple voices that can really capture a feeling and a vibe and energy. And so using that and using art and actually transported to a little world. So it was fun to come up with little worlds that each piece can look. I'm not sure. I think we tried in the beginning, like in the genesis of the book, we were like, told a story throughout. It doesn't really tell a story, but there are like Easter eggs. There are like weird connections, like weird art that are in book 1 to somewhere in book 3. Something that makes it feel like a story is that I wanted to capture the feeling of progression like in a video game. So there's like tropes within the book that try to create that feeling. Like there's like a save game point in every book, and there's like that just is is nonsense and is like, don't close the book while saving is in progress, and every book ends with like a boss fight and little like tropes like that.
I really like the addition of like the video games, because I noticed that like when I was like looking through your book and it like when you flip the page it like has the save point, and I was like, that is so genius, because I have so many students, including myself. I love like video games, and I'm like, my students love that so much, like, and to them it just makes learning the piano like not just I guess more fun, like a game. Like it's enjoyable, and you can make it relate back to what you do outside of piano.
I wanted the book to be like more than just a utilitarian thing. I wanted to create an experience.
Oh, that's a good way to put it. Create an experience. That's really cool, actually. I think it's really great what you're doing, and I think it's so unique because piano and storytelling is so important, and to be able to engage that for beginner students, I think is like key to keeping them like interested and understanding that music is more than just mechanical. So I think it's cool that you're creating these little worlds for them to explore.
I am stoked and proud to have done it, and it's still very much a work in progress. I mean, I'm still like, I'm right in the thralls of trying to put out the second edition right now. So I'm like, I'm eager and excited to see if people dig that, and I hope people like the new pieces that I've written. And yeah, I really hope that it continues to be a thing, and students, it's really exciting to me that students all over, like there's really kids all over the world who have used these things now. So that's like so cool. That's so mind-blowing. So I'm just stoked, and yeah.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I'm so excited, and like good luck with what you're doing and everything with your books. I follow you on TikTok, so I'll keep following you, like your journey and everything. I'm excited for like the next edition.
Cool.
And whatnot. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'll keep you posted. Thank you for following along. I look forward to checking out what you're doing. You had a thing too, right? You have this whole like storytelling thing.
Yeah, something similar. It's not, I guess it's like similar to yours, except for mine, instead of like random like little stories here and there, I try to do like almost like a mini story where it's like it tells a story from start to finish, like a fantasy kind of thing.
Yeah,
I like Game of Thrones,
cool.
So I was inspired by Game of Thrones, but I made it for kids. But like following that and then writing stories for each chapter of the story, like a novel almost, but
that's
short.
Rad.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, ciao for now.
Thanks. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. It was really cool talking to him and learn about his overall creative process. Catch us next time on the next episode for our PianoTales podcast, and until then, just keep on creating.